Okay, I know I'm late to the party on this, but obviously October is a month where a lot of stuff like horror movies and a lot of even horror series get released. For example, there was Teacup on Peacock, which I'll talk about later. Uzumaki is one that got released to HBO, and I think it's pretty messed up, okay? I'm gonna have to say that I don't recommend watching this. But I will have to say that I don't really know the source material very well. It's based on a manga book by Junji Ito, a very famous manga illustrator who is more than willing to delve into the world of not only horror, but just deeply disturbing things. And Uzumaki, I think this series is subtitled Spiral into Horror, is just that. I will have to say that it differs from a lot of horror movies in a certain way, but I need to comment on something. Uzumaki is the first time I've ever seen an adaptation of a manga done in black and white. Normally when you see adaptations of manga, it's done in anime style. Fine, I think that works out really well. Obviously the stuff in those manga books is meant to be cheaply printed and therefore they don't use color except on anything but the covers. That's also fine. The thing is, the black and white really makes Uzumaki pop. There's something about it that really makes its world even more disturbing. So for example, like, I don't know, some of the, Hitchcock, for example. Boy, I keep bringing him up in a lot of these 10-minute rants. When he did the movie Psycho, he could have and probably maybe should have shot that in color, but honestly, actually should have isn't really the right word. I don't think Psycho works unless it is in black and white. There are certain movies that I think the black and white really works for it, and Uzumaki would, I believe, be one of these examples. The fact is, somebody just essentially took pages and they just animated them. Whether or not they're accurate, I don't know. I did not read the original source material, which was, of course, one of the mangas. And this isn't the first time this story has been adapted. I found out there was a 2000 film with its title. Basically, here's what it feels like. I'll do my best to describe the plot of this because there isn't really much plot there. It takes place in some very small town, Japanese village somewhere. And most people live in long houses. Remember that, that's gonna be important later. And suddenly just everything goes absolutely frickin' nuts. And it's all related to the spiral. And basically what this feels like a story that was written by a committee. Because it feels like what they did is like, hey, you know spirals? Oh yeah, spirals. What's the most horrible thing that can happen with a spiral? So basically this whole film stuff just kind of happens. By film, I mean 4-part series. I don't really understand why is it a 4-part series. And I have to admit, when it ended, I actually went like, that's it? I kind of went like, because here's the thing. I understand that shows are getting smaller these days. I mean, we're lucky to get 10 episodes out of your favorite show these days, thanks to streaming. Now, some of the network shows will give you the full 23 that they used to give. But this, 4 episodes, just show me a movie. What is the point of chopping this up into 4 different episodes? And honestly, there isn't really, I don't even really remember much on the episodes because they've kind of all blurred together as far as like what happens on this show. And I think there's not really a point where I think there's like a point of attack or any point where this story really begins per se. I think that I think there is a main character whose name is Kiri or Kyrie. I think I've heard it actually pronounced both ways on the show. And she sort of realizes that the world is falling apart around her. And part of it is due to this curse that is always associated with the spiral. And basically anything horror you can imagine with a spiral is in this. So I kind of get the feeling like people are just writing down on a whiteboard things that are spiral shaped And eventually they came up with just all this stuff that happens in the film. There are characters in this film that turn to snails. Yeah, because snails have a spiral in their shell. Get it? And oftentimes the wind forms this spiral shape. And here's the thing. This curse affects this town and just stuff starts happening. Like a character will be run over and for some reason their body is contorted to the shape of a spiral. There's something funny yet horrible about that. And I guess that's kind of the tone here. And I guess the best description I can think of this show is edgelord. I really feel like this is edgelord done so horribly wrong. I almost feel like this is a satire of horror, and perhaps I'm not really getting the point, but I really feel like there actually is a really good point to this. And I'm going to talk about horror and how horror works. And I've seen a lot of, I'm not really a big connoisseur of horror films, but in a normal horror movie situation, let's say like you have a mad slasher or you have some supernatural effect that's happening, like say the movie It, where you kind of have both things happening. Characters are able to band together, figure out the terrifying supernatural force's weakness, and then exploit it, and then eventually defeat it. Nothing like that happens here. And yes, that is a spoiler, and I probably should have given a warning or something like that. Maybe I will when I can edit this. But yeah, these characters are just absolutely succumbing to all of the terrifying things that are happening around them. And what's weird is I really feel like there's something in these characters' minds that is just not processing this the way that I think most people should. Because there are times, because honestly, if I woke up and I found out that a friend of mine had turned into a snail, immediately I'd be suspicious, because at first I'd think like, am I next? What other hellish thing is gonna happen? And so many hellish things were raining on them like a literal tsunami of crap that was happening to them. And these characters are just unable to really do anything about it. Now, sometimes it just gets so silly. For example, this character's hair starts becoming spiral shaped, and then it actually has a hair fight with another character with spiral shapes in the hair, and I'm kind of going like, what the heck am I watching? I was just like, why is this even in here? And then just like, again, I think just committee trying to figure out the most horrible things they could do with spirals, spiraling out of control. I don't blame the show for trying to adapt this, and I don't even know if I'd say failing, because there are horror movies that end on a very dour and unhappy note. Uzumaki is one of them. And this is where I'm going to really spoil the ending, because in the end, the town just succumbs to its curse, and that is apparently it. Now, does this affect the entire world as we know it, or is it just this town? Because apparently the spiral curse caused people to huddle up in longhouses for safety, and then these people just start twisting and twisting, and then they start becoming spirals themselves, and then they start rebuilding the longhouses with all these stretchy hands, and then by the time we reach the end of the show, the whole town is in the shape of a spiral with its longhouses, leading to a spiral staircase, which leads to a bunch of people that have literally spiraled out of control and are sort of there like the denizens of hell. And at the end, the main character just goes down there and joins it. Does she live? I don't think so. Just kind of joins it. I'm guessing there's probably no sequel to this. It would be spoiled by a sequel in which the character, I don't know, discovers color or something and then rebels against this thing and wins. I feel like that's sort of the point of this, is that sometimes bad things happen and you don't have any control over them. They will just take you. But I really feel like, unlike most films, it really doesn't delve into how you really deal with this thing, because I didn't really feel like people really dealt with it a lot. Anyway, that's my 10-minute rant on Uzumaki.